we're seeing a real special place now, aren't we, Villa Park? It's the togetherness is very clear to see. It's just really interesting how you've got Nassif Sawiris and Wes Edens, the co-owners of Villa, sitting in the director's box smiling at the transformation of Villa, and then hearing the away end calling for Daniel Levy, the Tottenham chairman, to leave his role.
The 1874 Show by the Villa View.
Hello and welcome to the 1874 Show with myself, Dan Bardell, and the Athletic's own Gregg Evans, Global Gregg Evans. Warms my heart that I see so many people call him Global Gregg on social media and in forums. So I thank everyone for that. And if everyone could just continue calling him Global Gregg on social media, that would be much appreciated. I know Greg loves it too. Before we get into talking about Aston Villa, just a word for our sponsors, NordVPN. You can grab your exclusive NordVPN deal by going to thevillaview.tv/NordVPN. If you do that, you'll get a huge discount off the NordVPN plan. Plus, you'll also get 4 months for free. It's completely risk-free as well with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you're not going to Anfield next weekend, using NordVPN will enable you to stream the game. Right then, Greg, let's go. Aston Villa 2. No, first, how are you? Sorry, I always forget to ask how you are.
Yes, I'm well, Dan. I'm well, thank you. Yeah, quite a busy time with just 2 games remaining. Lots of articles that I'm working on to try and squeeze in before the end of the season. But no, happy and really excited actually with how the future's looking for Villa and what it's like being the Villa reporter. It's really good times at the moment.
Yeah, 2 big games incoming, but of course it was a massive game at Villa Park at the weekend as well. Aston Villa 2, Tottenham Hotspur 1. Greg, what was it like from the press box at the weekend?
It was really good, to be fair, really enjoyable. I thought, we're seeing a real special place now, aren't we, Villa Park? It's the togetherness is very clear to see. Quite interesting, actually, when the article that I wrote for The Athletic was just comparing how Villa's standing is now and how Villa's stature is compared to Tottenham's. If you look back to sort of 2008, 9, 10, when Villa were regularly finishing in 6th place under Martin O'Neill, I felt that Tottenham were a very similar sized club to Villa at that point. And it felt like both clubs had the infrastructure almost in place to go and kick on and finish in the top 4. But it ended up that only one club had a go at that, which was Tottenham. So yeah, I wrote about that at length, but in The Athletic. But it was just really interesting how you've got Nassif Sawiris and Wes Edens, the co-owners at Villa, sitting in the director's box smiling at the transformation of Villa, and then hearing the away end calling for Daniel Levy, the Tottenham chairman, to leave his role. It just feels like 2 clubs that are locked on 57 points and both chasing the same successes this season are actually heading in contrasting directions. I mean, Tottenham very much have still got the stadium and the higher revenue than Villa, even though Villa are making efforts to close that gap. But Villa certainly have the informed team, the manager, and the momentum, I think. So that clearly showed on the pitch today. And I think the England captain gets much superior treatment to the Scotland captain, unfortunately. And that almost went against Villa. And I just hope that one goal doesn't make a difference, because not having that penalty at all.
No, it's never a pen. Not for me and you agree on stuff like this, actually. But it's just not a pen because Harry Kane has initiated the contact. But we'll go into the game in wider detail shortly. But I'd actually forgot. It's so long ago now and so much has happened. I forgot that Villa and Spurs were around. Because you think of Man City, don't you, and what they've gone on to do. But Villa and Spurs were pretty much in and around the same points for 2-3 seasons in a row, weren't they? And Spurs at one point, with the right manager, got themselves to Champions League finals. I think they finished 3rd in the league. I think was the highest they finished under Poch. But they had a really good period. Now Villa have got that right manager. It feels like Villa are about to embark on that good period, and Villa are a club on the up and Spurs are on the way down. Now, I don't think Spurs' fall from grace will be as grand as Villa's was and going to play football in the Championship. I don't see that happening with Tottenham. But it does show you, if you make a few good decisions, or really good decisions in Villa's case, but also if you make a few bad decisions, it's not easy to fall away and things to spiral. And Villa have had it, and that is what's happening with Tottenham at the moment.
Yeah, I think so. If you look back through the years, I think Tottenham dealt with some of the bumps in the road a little bit better than Villa did. In years gone by. Obviously, both clubs have lost some of their top players over sort of the last 10, 15 years. But Tottenham were able to lose Gareth Bale and Luka Modric and rebuild to an extent and still stay within touching distance of those top clubs and remain competitive. Villa, when they lost Milner and Downing and Ashley Young, they just didn't replace them with the right players, and obviously the reduction in interest almost from Randy Lerner, the ex-owner, sent Villa spiralling down, unfortunately. And Tottenham still had the investment there, Villa didn't, and you've seen the two clubs sort of stretch to worlds apart. Actually, when Villa were getting promoted finally back in 2019, Tottenham were in the Champions League final, and then literally a world apart, weren't they, at that point? The credit to Villa for closing the gap really quickly on them. I know it's been 5 years, but it takes a long time to come back from the Championship and really start to threaten again in the higher echelons of the Premier League. Villa are certainly doing that now. It just feels like they have the right manager, they have the informed players, they have the momentum behind them. They're going to get the back in this summer, and it's really interesting times.
Yeah, just stay closer to your mic, please, Greg.
Sorry, I'm moving away and bouncing around.
You're an excited journalist nowadays, which has not always been the case with you with you covering Villa. I do think all it takes is one look. Villa were in the doldrums at the bottom of the table. They've made one really good decision to get Unai Emery in, and it has completely transformed the club. And it's going to be a really exciting few years for Villa. If Spurs make the right managerial appointment, they'll be back. But I said this on the preview show. I do a weekly podcast for Who Scored with journalist Jonathan Wilson, and there's a combined 11 section in there. And Jonathan Wilson's team for the combined 11 was Villa's 10, and then Harry Kane. That was the team that he picked, and over the last few years, unthinkable to have something like that. But it just shows you what having the right manager can do for players. Because I think if Spurs actually had made a sensible appointment over the last few years, if let's say Unai Emery had gone in there, actually Spurs may well be absolutely flying and punching above where you would expect them to now, because the players would be well coached. On Saturday, he was watching a Villa team that looked like they're coached in the week against a Tottenham team that at times looked like strange. They had no patterns of play with Tottenham whatsoever, and I've lamented that with Villa over the years, that you can't see what they've worked on in the week. In the first half, in particular, Villa should have scored more. I think Villa were just in control of the game. There was only one team that was dictating that game, controlling the game, and looked dangerous going forward. And that was Villa. Spurs had a little bit on the break, but really Villa were in control of that game. Villa were controlling the game, Greg.
Yeah, and I think that's what Emery would have been most pleased with. The fact that the first half they were excellent, Villa. They played exactly the way that Emery wanted them to play. They controlled possession well. They created plenty of chances. They played on the front foot. They engaged with the supporters. They weren't too aggressive when they didn't need to be. There were plenty of times where Villa got into high positions and just turned around calmly and played it back and built again, because they wanted to make sure that their formation was fully set before they attacked. And that's the most impressive thing now. I think that Villa, the players really know what to do now. They know that if plan A isn't working, they've got plan B and plan C, and plenty of different alternatives to turn to. Just find them so easy to watch now. They're just, okay, there were a few hairy moments still at times, but you're going to get that in every game, I think. But the way they can build out from the back now is really impressive, and they don't always have to do it. They can go long if they need to and mix it up. Point on what you're saying about Emery potentially being a Tottenham manager and whether that would have made their team any different. We just never know, do we? Because the more I look back at it now, the more I think that Emery was just the wrong fit for Arsenal at the time. Perhaps it was going to be difficult for any manager coming in at that point on the back of Arsene Wenger. But just because Emery didn't succeed at Arsenal or didn't do exactly what he wanted to do, doesn't mean he's a bad manager. And it doesn't mean that he's not an elite manager, which I actually think he is now. I really do think. Really trying to not be too biased and get too carried away with the fact that he's doing this with Villa and it's the club that I cover. But I've tried to be impartial on it, and I've tried to speak to as many different voices as I can about his level of coaching. And, it just keeps coming back to me that he just knows what he's doing. and if you can get the buy-in from the players, then typically that club goes on to have success. And Valencia were excellent, Sevilla were excellent, Villarreal succeeded, and now Villa are on a charge of their own. So, I just think he's the real deal.
I've just done another podcast where it's basically a podcast where they have people on and you pick your best ever 11 for your club. So obviously I've done Villa, and I've picked my team, and I find myself going through it, and I'm saying, who's the last goalkeeper to win a trophy for Villa in 1996? I was the last person that was playing left back when Villa won a trophy in 1996. In 5 years' time, I honestly think I'll be doing those kind of things, and I'll be having players from Unai Emery's Villa in that all-time 11, and Unai Emery might well go on to be that all-time manager. I know Villa haven't achieved anything yet, but you're saying, I just find them so interesting to watch now, and everything that's going on at the club feels really, really positive. I'm just convinced for the first time, probably in O'Neill, I thought we'd have some success, and to an extent we did, but I'm convinced there's going to be a trophy here in the next 5 years and under this manager. Absolutely convinced of it. And if there isn't, I don't think we're ever going to win a trophy ever again.
Don't say that, Dan.
It's true, though. If Villa can't win a trophy with this manager, he's just world class. Everything he does is just he's just a touch of class, and he is elite. You're right. I was a bit like you. I was a bit wary of saying it, but now I just look at the transformation of that team in a short space of time. I'm watching Villa and Spurs, and Tyrone Mings and Romero, for example. I'm watching Romero. It's all over the place. He's like closing down things that he shouldn't be closing, and I get that's his game a little bit. Yeah, Mings could be accused of perhaps doing some of those things over the years, but the way his game's changed, playing in such a controlled manner now, I think that's the word I keep using to describe Villa under Unai Emery. There's just this level of control that I have never, ever seen before. Even when we've had good teams, I don't feel it's been like this. John McGinn, every week I come away thinking, I don't think John McGinn was man of the match today.
He was at the weekend, wasn't he? I thought he was.
Wherever he plays, he's central midfield, then he was right wing, then he's up front at the end of the games quite a lot nowadays. Just influencing the game. I just look at the improvement of those players, and it is staggering. I know we all talk about it every week and we're saying it's unbelievable, but I actually don't think the wider media realise the difference. They'll see Villa pushing towards the top six and say, "Oh, look at the job he's done; he's excellent." But if you watch Villa every week like we do, the improvement is absolutely staggering.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest compliments you can pay the team at the moment as well is they're making almost every other opponent they play against look so average.
Yeah, I think Spurs might be average, to be honest, nowadays.
They've made Tottenham look average over 2 games, let's be honest. And, it's not like Villa are just beating, your Southamptons and your Leeds and Leicesters and, teams like that. They're beating Newcastle comfortably at home with one of the most controlled and most complete performances I've ever seen as a Villa reporter.
Same.
For sure, you look at this, people will say, well, what about the 7-2 victory over Liverpool, which, okay, was, unbelievable to many levels. But against Newcastle, they were every single department was on top of their game. They were perfect. It was like watching perfection, which I presume is like watching Man City most weeks. So yeah, Villa aren't just doing it against the lower level teams; they're doing it against the top teams. They're clearly competing. I asked Jacob Ramsey, I asked Unai Emery the same question over on the weekend. I said, look, Emery has the third highest points per game ratio of any manager in the Premier League who's managed over 10 games this season, and that's only behind Mikel Arteta and Pep Guardiola. And I said, look, is this form sustainable over the entire duration of next season? And Ramsey's reaction was, well, that's the plan. We feel really comfortable under this manager. We feel like there's a plan to get even better. Emery was a little more diplomatic with his answer. He said, look, we've got to remain demanding. The players have got to buy into everything that I continue to say, etc., but who's to say that Villa can't continue playing like this and not results like this? What's going to change? If anything, they should get better with the players that they're looking at signing this summer. It doesn't always work like that, as we've said on multiple podcasts, but in theory, it should.
Yeah, well, even that points per game stat that you've just said, he's third. I imagine he's probably not too far off Arteta now, really.
No, it wouldn't be
Because
too far.
they've obviously had a few bad results recently. He's third, but the two that are above him are managers that it's a bigger sample size of. But they've been at their clubs a long time. It's Arteta's fourth season, I think, as Arsenal manager, and Pep's been at Manchester City for a long time now. They're on a journey, but they're quite well into their journeys now.
Yeah.
Emery's sitting third points per game. The journey's only just beginning. He's had one transfer window where Villa didn't do an awful lot, did they? Villa weren't very active in the January transfer window. In some respects, they weakened the squad in January, certainly up top in terms of Danny Ings going and bringing in someone who's a rookie in Duran. They've brought in a left back who's done really well, but Villa weren't massively active in January. We're at the start of our journey, and we're already talking about him being third in points per game this season for managers that have had 10 or more games. Brighton having an excellent season. He was ahead of De Zerbi, but De Zerbi walked into a club that were going well. They were doing well under Potter. They were relatively far in their journey as well. He's took it to the next level, De Zerbi, and he's done a fantastic job. Villa were 17th. Didn't look like they were ever going to score. Didn't look like they were going to keep a clean sheet. Couldn't find a settled 11, a settled system, really. He's come in and done that in such a short space of time. Like he's getting a lot of credit, in fairness. I still don't think he's getting the credit he deserves.
It's really impressive. I hope it doesn't go the opposite, where he's had success at clubs and then it's tended to tail off a little bit, towards the end. I hope it doesn't work out like that, and I hope if Villa do get into Europe, which would be an exceptional achievement and something that we'll all celebrate, I hope that doesn't affect the league form, because that was maybe something that was difficult at Villarreal when they went on their Europa League run, and then when they went on the Champions League run, of course, the league form suffered a little bit. Perhaps it was always going to, because they had a very small or not at a high level squad. So I hope that doesn't happen at Villa. I hope, as you say, Villa are at the start of their journey, and it's not a case of, well, the managers come in, the players have really bought into their method, into his methods. I hope they don't just get bored of it in the future and it tails off, because he's extremely demanded. Which I know I've said this over and over on podcasts, but the level of detail that goes into preparation for the games isn't for every player. It is tiring. The long video sessions, the ridiculously long video sessions at times. If Villa were losing games and they were having to sit through these video sessions, it would be painful for the players.
Buy-ins there, isn't it? Because the results are there.
Yeah, because they are so long. But at the moment, players and staff and staff are included in team meetings, of course, as well. That they're all not going along with it, because that's the wrong word. They're all buying into it, because they're enjoying this journey as well. They're enjoying this adventure. They're acting like sponges themselves, because they're trying to gain everything possible from this elite manager and his exceptional coaching team, and they're really enjoying the preparation because of the results that are following. But as I say, if you start to lose games and you're debriefing an entire game after a defeat, it's painful. And I just hope that Villa don't go on that run and then it spirals out of control, because everything is geared around this manager now. Everything is being given to this manager to take the club forward. And as well as it's going now, if it doesn't go so well, then it's going to be disastrous, because everything's geared towards him.
I'll tell you what I'd like to see from you. I'd like to know a bit more about his backroom staff, because you did something recently around Austin McPhee, who we all know, and during the games, Emery stands up the whole time. I don't think he ever sits down, really. And Austin McPhee gets up at certain phases of the game, feels like he's got a fair bit of responsibility amongst that coaching staff. But I don't really know what the other staff's roles are. It'd be interesting, and I'm sure other Villa fans feels it'd be interesting to find out what it is they do. I mean, Gerrard had so many staff members, but it felt like they all had we kind of knew what their role was supposed to be. We were terrible, but we knew what the role was supposed to be. I don't really know anything about his coaching staff, so I'd find it quite interesting if you could do something around that. You might not want to, or you might be planning it already, but we don't know much about his coaching staff, and because you don't see them during the games, because Emery's in control. yeah, I'd just like to know more about what they do.
I was just going to show you my to-do list because it's very up towards the top. But first came up my scorecard from yesterday, which I'm sure you don't.
You weren't playing golf, were you, yesterday, Greg?
I was yesterday.
Celebrating a Villa win with a round of golf.
Yesterday, got handicap cut and everything. So,
excellent.
But yeah, it's on the to-do list, and it's one of the articles that will be coming out actually in the next few weeks. Okay. Yeah, I mean, look, it's really interesting to just summarise very briefly. Emery wanted to get all of his backroom staff in through the door. You know, when he took over, that was one of the assurances that he asked for. It meant that Villa had to move on people like Neil Cutler, who was very well respected within the club, Aaron Danks, the first team coach, who again was well respected and took on the caretaker role for a couple of games because Emery wanted this full team in. So I think the one. There's a couple of key appointments. We've mentioned Damir Vidagani, who's his personal assistant. Definitely a key appointment. But I think having Paco in, who previously worked at Liverpool when Rafa Benitez helped Liverpool win the Champions League. I think because of the Arsenal experience, Emery decided to bring someone in with experience of the Premier League. To help him and to just, and Paco's been a manager himself as well, and he's gone through those experiences. I think just having that old experienced head alongside him has really helped. And then some of the other guys, his goalkeeping coach and his first team coach and his analyst and his fitness and strength and conditioning coach have been long-term allies, people that have been with him at Sevilla and Valencia and Paris Saint-Germain and Arsenal and Villarreal. So he's got a core group that he trusts implicitly, but also fresh ideas from Paco. And then obviously Damir Vidagani, who is his assistant and helps with off-field matters. So while we are always constantly praising Emery, it is elite coaching team as well that are helping. And yes, I will have lots more of the finer details on them in the weeks ahead.
That's good. Because I
Thank you for spoiling that story.
Sorry. I knew Neil Cutler. Like I know kind of what he did, and he's very, very good. He's very good at talking, obviously, about what he does as well, Neil. But even like the goalkeeping coach that had the relationship with Emery previously, it'd be interesting to delve into that, especially as we know as well that Martinez loved Neil Cutler and worked so closely with him. It would be good to read that. Well, there we go. I mean, I've not given you the idea because you already had it, but it's at least it shows that you're planning to write something that people are interested in. Because if I'm interested in it, most Villa fans will probably be interested in it, I would say. But yeah,
let's hope nobody gets in there first. Now you've shared the idea with the whole world.
If you've got it, if you're a journalist of salt, though, I think you are, Greg. You're already working on it. The inner workings are already there. You've already started. You don't just do it and then it comes out the next day. These things take time. You're a builder, aren't you? Like Unai Emery, you're a builder with your pieces. I know how you work.
Next topic.
If you're getting fed up of missing all the live football, then our new show sponsor, NordVPN, will be able to help you out. NordVPN is a secure and private service which works on pretty much any device, including your laptop, mobile and smart TV. So if you want to watch, let's say, some live US content, it allows you to appear like you're in that country. And whilst you're connected, no one can find out what you're doing, including your internet service provider. Beyond this, the service also has threat protection baked in to protect you from intrusive website ads and malware, which is pretty handy. As part of NordVPN supporting the Villa View, they've given us an exclusive deal of up to 65% off and 4 months for free. This also includes Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. All you got to do is go to thevillaview.tv/NordVPN and sign up. All the details will be in the description of this video. And as always, we're truly grateful to anyone that signs up. We know money's tight, but if you think NordVPN is worthwhile and it's going to help you out, then this really helps us keep the channel running. All the best, up the Villa. Let's talk player of the year then.
I think Martinez should be much higher in the thoughts for player of the year because he literally makes an important save every single game. Like
His save
every
against
single game, that's as good as like a striker scoring every game, and it literally is every game.
No,
so
right.
in another season, on the back of his World Cup winning campaign, and the fact that he's making a world-class save every single game, the fact that he's learned how to adopt this new system from playing out from the back, and his distribution is clearly much better. And he obviously is a vocal presence and somebody who helps guide the team and filled in at captain for a part of the season. I think he would be really high up there, and if not, the standout candidate for Player of the Year. But yeah, there are a couple of others. Ollie Watkins, goals he hasn't scored 3 games or 4 games now, is it?
I thought it might be 5. I think
it's 4. But you have to remember the incredible run that he went on. Broke all sorts of goal scoring records at Villa.
It's 5 actually. It's 5.
Is it 5? Right, 5. Yeah, okay. Always just feels longer, doesn't it? The longer they look, obviously, but the longer they go on, the more it starts to feel like, is this a drought? But his figures over the course of the season will back him up, no matter if he doesn't score another goal again this season. So that run that he had was really important. It helped lift Villa away from relegation bother and towards the top half of the table. Really impressive year, and I know I still would be surprised if he didn't get back into the England squad next month.
Yeah.
Mings has just turned into Mr. Reliable for me. I feel like Villa have conceded 4 goals in 13 games from open play, and a lot of that is to do with Mings and Konza, who've been excellent. Konza often gets overlooked in all this, doesn't he? It's always Mings is the better defender. Konza is slightly.
I would say Mings was having a good season under Gerrard as well. I think that was the thing. Yeah,
I agree. Mings was probably the informed player under Gerrard, wasn't he? When nobody else was performing. So for his consistency over the season, he certainly needs to be in the conversation. Douglas Luiz, interviewed him recently, and he said to me that he's in the form of his life. I didn't see him when he was younger, but certainly in his Villa days, he's playing better than I've ever seen. And again, another one that should be in the reckoning, if not, the guy. 5 goals and 5 assists. Excellent from set pieces. Has scored from 2 corners. What a season he's had. And Ashley Young, just as you said, the same reasons. Somebody who's guided the side through tough times, was really, really important when Gerrard left his role. Made it very clear to people around the club, and John McGinn did as well. To be fair, the two of them. If there's anything you need us to do, during this interim period, we're here. We're here to help. As all proper leaders should do. Anything media-wise or anything like that, facing up to the cameras or dealing with any external issues, and just pulling the dressing room together when it was in caretaker management. Young and McGinn were big during that period. So yeah, somebody who just wanted around, and it's just mad, isn't it? I still laugh at Ashley Young because 15 years ago, was it? Yeah, 15 years ago when he was at Villa, he was just like the little kid, the joker. Him and Gabby just taking the mick out of people and causing all sorts of havoc around the training ground. Yet now you see him with his family and his children. He's a proper father figure now for the players as well, and somebody who's been excellent as a performer at right back as well.
When we were watching him play left wing for Villa, I never thought 15 years later I'd be watching him play right back for Villa. At 37 years of age.
It's like for me, it's literally like now thinking, can you imagine Bukayo Saka being the father figure at Arsenal and playing at right back, and being the one that gets in the referee's ear and time wasting, and being the leading voice when a manager gets sacked. You just couldn't imagine it, could you?
I remember when
Harvey Barnes at Leicester, someone like that, just young nippy winger.
Grealish coming back and playing full back at 37.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Rule it out.
Doesn't make sense, does it? It just doesn't feel right. I remember the first time he played there, or the first period he played there at Manchester United, and he was playing left back, I suppose, more at that point, and I was like, I'm not having this. He's never a fullback in a million years, but he's learned on the job and become very, very accomplished at what he does. And if you think about the time he spent was it a year and a half he was at Inter Milan for?
Mm.
He's playing wing back there rather than fullback. But imagine that experience that he got playing in Serie A and winning the league for Inter, playing as a big part of that team as a wing back. And then he's come back to Villa. He's supposed to be a squad player, really, someone who's good in the dressing room that can come in and fill in when you need him to. He's got to be getting a new contract. Villa would be mindless not to keep him around for another year, because he's not slowing down. If anything, He's becoming more reliable and getting better.
I mean, he deserves a new contract. He deserves another year at Villa. I don't know what they're going to do yet. I'm sure we'll find out in the weeks ahead. But he definitely deserves one. And from the conversations we've had with Emery, he doesn't look at Ashley Young as a 37-year-old old player. He looks at Ashley Young as a good right back.
Because he likes having a bit of experience in his team. You look at some of his other teams, he has players in their 30s in the team. Emery's, in previous experiences anyway, Emery's quite big on that. Yeah,
he's happy with it. He says that Young helps him out on various pointers, and he often asks him about certain things. He's somebody who's very well respected in the group, and Emery feels the same. So, yeah, he doesn't look at his age; he looks at his quality.
I mean, he played. I don't know whether you noticed it from where you sat, but I'm in the whole 10, so I'm watching Douglas Luiz's free kick come straight at me. Ashley Young's the one lining up the Villa wall, and that Villa wall did play a part in that goal because it kind of blocked Forster off, and that Forster couldn't see the ball quick enough to get across. But I was watching Ashley Young, and he was dictating on the pitch what the Villa kind of players should do in their wall, which I thought was really interesting. Again, that just shows the leadership role that he's got at the club.
Yeah, and it's reinforcing the manager and the coaches' directions. Villa spend a lot more time now on set pieces. Emery sees the benefit in it. Austin McPhee, the set piece coach, has got greater authority than he did when under Steven Gerrard. If you look now in the dugout, the two people that are directing during the game are Unai Emery and Austin McPhee during set pieces. So his role is really important, and I think Villa, from spending time at Bodymoor Heath and interviewing the players, I'll often go up there on a Thursday afternoon and interview some of the players after training. A lot of the time they're out having extra free kick and attacking corner sessions and going through walkthroughs of various routines. Some of the players are asking for extra individual video clips so that they know their exact role in the free kick and corners routine. So I just think Villa are looking at every single angle now and just going into much more detail, whereas before it was always like, can we find a moment of magic almost and go and beat the opposition team? Now there's not a single stone left unturned. Every single player is fully drilled on what he's got to do, and every situation is worked on at length.
I mean, we were upset to lose to Wolves obviously the week before, and it was a set piece goal. It's always frustrating when you lose a game and the only goals come from a set piece. That is disappointing. And you're saying how much they work on those things, so it will have been frustrating. If you look at it from another point of view, that's the first time I remember us conceding off a set piece since Nottingham Forest away in October. We were pretty feeble from set pieces, actually. Yeah. We looked in trouble every time. But I remember that Everton game and Bournemouth game, the first two games of the season.
Yeah,
every set piece that came in.
Yeah, and also what we've got to remember is when Tyrone Mings isn't in the team, Villa seem to struggle because they are quite a short side. So having Mings in the team, he's the best defender at getting first contact on the ball. And it was just, it was typical that the game he didn't play against Bournemouth, Villa conceded twice from set pieces. You're right, Dan, to flag up the Wolves game. It was decided by a single set piece, but equally the Fulham win was decided by a set piece as well.
I'm not knocking anyone. I think we were looking at it and we were annoyed by it. But actually, when was the last time that happened? It was
and neither am I. Bigging up any particular player or routine or anything. I'm just saying, set pieces are so important, and Emery recognises that. And I think he quite likes the fact that he's got a set piece coach alongside him who, is an expertise in that field and can share some good ideas with him.
It was quite funny that I thought Luiz's set piece delivery was probably the worst it's been for ages. The corners were just not happening. Whatever we were trying, it just didn't work on Saturday. But then in the same game, he scores the winner off a free kick, and on the face of it probably looks like Forster should maybe get there. But the way Villa have worked that set piece and set up their own wall means that if Luiz gets it over the wall and it's slightly away from centre, you've given yourself a massive chance of scoring, and that's what they did. We need to decide who we think the player of the year is. I think it's down to two now from what we've said. I think it's probably down to Mings and Luiz. Who would global Gregg Evans give it to?
I'm gonna just surprise a few here, and I would still give it to Martinez. I know that sounds,
Really?
yeah. I feel that if you were to take any player out of that Villa team, you'd notice Martinez's absence more than anything. So based on that, and because of what I said previously, the fact that his saves are going unnoticed almost because he does them so regular, I'm going to give it to him still. But I totally understand anybody who says Mings or Luiz, because I agree that both of them have had good seasons as well.
Who do you think will win it then?
Do you know what? I think Ollie Watkins might.
Do you? I think Luiz is a shoo-in.
Do you reckon?
I think I'm tight between Luiz and McGinn. I can't separate those two really. I think they've both been brilliant. And I think the thing about those two is, I think when they played under the previous manager as well, they were good. So they've got the longevity of the whole season. If you look at I actually think Watkins has been really good all season as well, but the goals weren't really there in the first half of the season. I think what Luiz and Mings were doing in the first half of the season should play a part. So I can't separate those two. But I think Douglas Luiz will win it. And when I put the poll out earlier on the Villa View Twitter, Luiz was comfortably ahead. So that tells me that he will probably win it.
Going to get the supporters player of the year, isn't it?
Yes. And then how's the other one decided? Is players player, isn't it?
Yes, players player. Which I just think might be Ola. I just think Ollie might get it for his goals, but we'll see. I don't know anything. I don't know. I've spoken to enough players about who they think.
Clubman of the year will be Ashley Young. He's got that sewn up. Clubman.
Yeah, I think
still
so.
do that. That used to be the one that no one wanted, but I think that's a good award. The Clubman of the year.
Clubman of the year. Yeah. It's almost like when you've played really shit for your team, but you get a nice little touch. There we go. We're really proud of your efforts, mate.
No, but he's been for the.
But I'm not talking about Ashley Young. No. In Sunday League football, that's typically our Clubman of the year.
I definitely won that when I used to play rugby. The Clubman of the year, definitely won that in my youth. I think Luiz will win it, but it'd be interesting to see players player. Actually, do we have? I don't know if we have a managers player of the season or not. I don't remember them doing one last year.
No, it's just supporters player and players player, isn't it?
I suspect Ramsey will get young player again.
Do you remember the years when the supporters decided they didn't even want to vote? They were so bad.
There was the 1 year too.
It's like a world. It seems like 2 years in a row. Seems like the way that, doesn't it now?
The McLeish one, I think everyone wanted to vote for Robbie Keane. He's only there for 6 games. I think he was probably in the top. He's probably in the top 3.
Was it the relegation year and then the first year in the championship? I'm sure 2 years in a row.
It might have been 3 years in a row.
Yeah, it might have been 3, but it was definitely 2. But yeah, God, when you think back to those days, I mean, just remember being at Villa Park and when the team was. Oh, we've got to talk about the team announcement before anything, but I presume you heard it.
The new one.
New one. So
yeah, I wasn't sure about it.
This will lead onto it, but I was just going to say, I just remember in that relegation year when Villa's team was announced and all the senior players were booed, and then any academy graduate was cheered. And I interviewed Jordan Lydon a couple of years ago, and he played in one of the games. I can't remember the exact game. It might have been the Liverpool game. No, he come off the bench in the Liverpool game.
I think it was Southampton. I don't know why I remember this. It was Southampton. We lost 4-2, and Lydon played.
That was it, yeah. And he said it was so uncomfortable for me, because he thinks that it was only him. I don't even think Grealish started because Remy Gard just weren't having Grealish. And he said it was so uncomfortable.
Defender that came in and played a few games. I completely forgot.
Yes, Kevin Toner.
Kevin Toner as well.
Yeah. So he said, it was like, I'm there, sort of trying to gain as much advice from the senior pros as I can. Apparently Micah Richards and Jolie Ness got really good with Lydon. They were 2 players that he name checked has been really helpful during that season. So for whatever fans think of them, and fair enough if they're not having them, that they certainly didn't perform very well for Villa. But it's important to point out that they did care about the club. They did care about the young players coming through, and they wanted to help. As Lydon sort of highlighted. But Yeah, mad times. So should we get onto the team announcement at Villa Park?
Just on that, I'd never knock Richards because I think he was unfortunate, and I think he did. When he's trying to speak to the fans after the Wickham game, I think he did front up and he tried. But Lescott, that signing couldn't have gone any worse. Everything he did on the pitch, even like that into the weight off the shoulders thing, like he just was an expert at doing and saying the wrong thing. He might have had good intentions, but he was an expert at doing and saying the wrong things. And then he was given the captaincy, which was absolutely mindless because the fans really weren't having him. So why were you making him? Why were you making him captain? The players actually asked for the team not to be read out before when they do it twice, don't they? So they do it at kickoff. The players that requested that we stopped doing that, and I don't think we had a team announcement at kickoff, so they couldn't be on the pitch getting booed. Just Bakuna was getting hammered because he'd said something about the Champions League. Lescott had said the weight off the shoulders thing. Richards was getting booed. Guzan had done something. Just it was awful. I mean, I'm glad you put that. I thought that new team announcement thing was very odd.
Yes, I described it as different. And
where's that come from?
I don't know. I haven't asked the question. I'll try and find out if there was any specific reason for it, if it was pushed by a certain new someone attending the game over the weekend, or if it was just, by coincidence.
I felt sorry for the announcer because he's got to do it. If he's been instructed to do it, he has to do it. But it just didn't. I don't think it came across well or right. No, not well. It wasn't bad. I just don't think it was right. It just didn't work. Like Jacob, sure. JJ Ramsey.
I'm not sure what to say. I don't think it was. It was a little bit cringe at times.
You brought it up, so it must have not been great.
It was just a surprise for me. I was just like, "What's all this about?" Because every player, and I mean, look, I'm all for praising the players and building them up and trying to generate an atmosphere and helping improve the atmosphere at Villa Park. I'm all for that. Just not sure about
that. What I found funny about it? It was like, so for McGinn, for example, it would be Super John McGinn, which is fine because that's what he's called. The announcer's probably been doing that all season anyway. Number 7, Super John McGinn, and who was the other one? There was someone else. There's some who've got like names or songs that we sing about them, but it was like if there's no song for the player or anything, it was just like Villa's number 4 just to say something. But one thing I will say is if we're talking about that as being the biggest worry that we've got at the moment, then the football club is light years ahead of where it's been.
As I said at the start of the show, it's Villa. It's a special place to be at the moment, Villa Park. It's every journalist who I sit next to, is the opposition reporter from The Athletic, and Villa have won 6 games on the bounce, so it's gone very, very well for Villa. But they all say, wow, this place is really rocking again. I've been here so many times and the atmosphere has been dead, and it's great again now, which is what Villa have been trying to get for so long, isn't it?
Well, even in years gone by, if Spurs were coming to Villa Park having lost 6 away games in a row, I'd be like, well, that's over then. They're going to win this weekend, aren't they? Obviously. But Villa are just a completely different beast now. I would describe as we're a proper team now, I would say. Villa are a proper club and a proper team, and that has not always been the case, especially in the last decade.
No, and that has been the plan for 4 or 5 years. This club has been built over 3 or 4 seasons now. Yes, Unai Emery has come in and added the sprinkling of magic that it needed, and his elite level of coaching has certainly helped the players flourish. But there are a lot of good work that's gone on at that club. There are some really intelligent people working behind the scenes. The players that have been signed clearly are good players. We look back to some of the previous months when things weren't going so well, and we were quick to blame poor recruitment, weren't we? I remember after the Stevenage game, it was because the players Villa have signed aren't good enough, or and Gerrard, I think Gerrard himself was kind of saying we need better players at some point. But the players are good enough, and that's just shown. So you've got to give them,
difference in the two managers.
Give them the players. Got it. You can't, as I said this before, Emery is a genius almost. He's working. He's getting this underperforming group, but talented group, performing really well. But he couldn't just do this with any group. He really couldn't. And it's important to highlight that.
Well, the previous manager said, if the players won't do what I want them to do, we'll buy some different players. That was very much his mentality. Whereas the mentality of Unai Emery is, the right players aren't available in January. I'm going to work with what I've got and improve the team, make the team better, and make those players better. And
which is what he did
exactly what he's
well.
whatever happens now, whether we get Europe or not, he's achieved that.
Yeah,
if Villa could have just picked up a couple more points at the start of the season, God, I think of some of those games that passed by, just nothing at Leeds at home Leeds away against 10 men, 0-0.
Forest away.
Just nothing, guys. Nothing happened. They were boring. I was fed up of watching Villa. I love going to Villa Park and watching my team now. I absolutely love it, and that hasn't always been the case. So whatever happens, Unai Emery's done a tremendous job. Just before we go, then, Greg, you got anything coming up that you can tell us about?
There's a few things. Yeah, there's actually the next few weeks are going to be lots of stories on the Athletic. So just you keep looking at the daily updates. Really, is going to be a lot. Yeah. I've got a very busy week trying to get everything done. So it's great to be in this position to still have 2 games where everything's riding on it. So yeah, I've got a lot of things that I'm working on. You'll see them over the next couple of weeks.
Must be difficult as well because the Athletics a sideline, really, isn't it? Golf's your main role. So,
yeah,
you're trying to fit everything
really
in around your golf.
Yeah, it's really frustrating having a full-time job at the moment with such long days and all those golfing opportunities passing me by.
You've got the summer coming, although you'll probably be quite. I imagine you'll be actually. That's the exciting thing as well. Out of all the Athletics journalists, you'll probably be one of the most busiest in the summer.
Yeah, I think I will. Probably better get to know George Mendes a bit better.
Yeah, little tease there from Greg. I'll be getting on George Mendes' client list when we've got off this podcast. This made me laugh. I remember doing, I used to do the podcast with Tom Julian. We were talking about Mendes once, and he called him Jorge Mendes. I don't know where he got that from. And he was convinced he was called Jorge Mendes. I was like, it's not George Mendes. Stop trying to be so.
Georgia, isn't it? Georgia.
It's not Jorge. I think we can.
I don't know. Are we going with the? We better check this before we say it. I mean,
it's not Jorge Mendes. I've never heard. The only person I've ever heard call him Jorge Mendes was Tom Julian. So there's no chance that's right. Let's go anyway. Greg, been a pleasure to podcast with you as always. Thanks to everyone that's listened. We're getting good. We're getting a lot of nice feedback on Twitter around this podcast, aren't we, Greg? That we both really appreciate.
Yeah,
we both enjoy doing it.
Fair, yeah. I mean, look, I much prefer to be out on the golf course, but I really do genuinely enjoy doing it. And yeah, the feedback's been excellent. So thank you ever so much for everybody who's listened. Yeah, really appreciate it.
Yeah, look, we're trying to look. There's so many Villa podcasts. Everyone can have their favourites, and that's fine. And everyone can choose which ones they want to listen to and which ones they don't. But I do think this one is different to a lot of the stuff, a lot of the Villa pods, especially that are out there. So yeah, we really appreciate the kind feedback. And if there's anything anyone wants to see us incorporate into the podcast, let us know on social media or the YouTube comments. And thanks to all those that are listening over on Spotify as well, because I know we're getting strong numbers over there because this podcast is put in about 1,000 places nowadays by Adam. So yeah, wherever you're listening, basically, we really appreciate it. We'll be back next week post Anfield. We'll try and do it early on in the week. Again, if Greg hasn't got too much golf to play, we'll try and get it out early in the week. So yeah, yet again, thanks for joining me, Greg. Have a good rest of the week, everyone that's listening. Villaview will be back with various content pieces